we've learned is that the oceans are so much more frighteningly polluted than I would have ever guessed in my wildest dreams that it's just completely shocking. The point is that now we can see the urgency of doing something about pollution in the ocean. People have got to pay attention and do something about it.
Nearly 40 years ago, Dr. Roger Payne founded Ocean Alliance, an organization dedicated to the conservation of marine environments through scientific research and education. Considered the world's leading whale biologist, Dr. Payne, joined by Scott McVeigh, discovered in 1967 that humpback whales sing songs. It was Dr. Payne's recordings of these songs that spearheaded the groundbreaking Save the Whales campaign, an effort that helped launch the modern conservation movement.
That force carried people on. They began to see that they could do things together if they really operated together.
Dr. Roger Payne. Thanks, that's great.
They could make a difference. They could make a change. They began to win some things.
And without realizing it myself, I said that I felt I really didn't want to live in a world without whales.
At that time, whales were in danger of being hunted to extinction. And for years, Dr. Payne was a voice among many who fought within the International Whaling Commission meetings, trying to end whaling, eventually succeeding. This moratorium helped reduce the harvesting of whales by 99%. Long before the world demanded an end to whaling, Dr. Payne began to warn that marine pollution would one day become the worst threat to not only whales, but to potentially all of humanity, as fish became too poisonous to eat. The question of just how polluted the oceans have become spurred Ocean Alliance to set out on a global research expedition to understand just how badly polluted the food chain has become. A problem no oceanographic institution or government agency had ever tackled before. The Voyage of the Odyssey was an ambitious 5-year mission collecting data to analyze the levels of synthetic contaminants and metals in our oceans. This enormous undertaking resulted in the first ever comprehensive worldwide assessment of the ecotoxicological risks facing humans and animals that depend on the sea for food. The Odyssey sailed over 87,000 nautical miles, visiting 121 ports in 22 countries. Scientists, students and policymakers from every country the Odyssey visited joined the research crew on board, allowing these communities to engage in the issues of local concern. Ocean Alliance achieved many goals on this voyage, including helping to create a 1 million square mile marine mammal sanctuary in Papua New Guinea. Whether you live in New York or California, Kansas or China, most of the chemicals you discard are ultimately carried downhill into the sea.
We're collecting fats from sperm whales that we then analyze for their pollutants. The fish in the sea that we eat now are so polluted by so many compounds that some of them are simply not safe to eat. One is warned against eating very large examples, that means they're very old, and have had a long lifetime to accumulate lots of substances in them that are bad for you. If you have fish which have 2 parts per million of PCBs, PCBs are one of the substances that pollute these animals, you are allowed to sell them as food. If they have more than that, you aren't. If they have 50 parts per million, you have to consider that they are toxic waste and you have to dispose of them in special facilities. Killer whales have been found with concentrations as high as 400 parts per million. 50 parts per million, you have to dispose of them in special facilities. Beluga whales in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, 3,200 parts per million. And bottlenose dolphins, 6,800 parts per million. These animals are swimming toxic dump sites. They would be eligible for cleanup under the Superfund laws. If you could clean them up, you can't. There's no way to clean them up. That problem is a serious problem, and it affects whales as well as it affects people. It affects anything that lives at the top of an oceanic food chain. Well, where do we live? At the tops of oceanic food chains.
With this voyage, we weren't just looking at the baseline of what's out there in pollution, how is this pollution being spread around the planet, but we're now also looking at effects of pollution on the animals by growing cell lines in a laboratory. 1.5 billion, or more than 1.5 billion people rely on seafood as their primary source of meat protein. If we lost access to a lot of this fish in the sea, it would be the biggest human catastrophe ever.
Margaret Mead was once asked, do you think that a single individual can make a difference? And as she pointed out, it's the only thing that ever has made a difference. People don't realize that they can do it. They can change the world. You know, there's nothing to it. All people have to do is to change their minds. And that's something that is in their own power. And if they can decide to do that, yeah, we can change the world. And if we do that, we will be the greatest generation that ever lived in the history of the human race. Nobody will ever have had an opportunity, a shot at greatness as much as we have. If we fail to do that, we will be the most vilified in history, because people will know we knew what was going on. We recognized the fact that the earth was falling apart, and we did nothing.
After almost 40 years of prizes, awards, documentaries, science and education, Ocean Alliance continues to prove that it can and does make a difference in this world. The oceans belong to no one, but are vital to all. Ocean Alliance pledges its commitment to help save this precious resource.